Without warning, they removed me from the family vacation, which I had paid for in full. "We don't need you, Grandpa," they said. "We'll go without you." I silently took my suitcases and left on my own, and an hour later, all their reservations were canceled. The plane flew without them, they knocked on my door, but no one was there. And then I saw 57 missed calls. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Giles's fist slammed against my mahogany dining table, sending the salt shaker tumbling onto its side. White crystals scattered across the dark wood like tiny broken promises. "Leland, we deserve the best." His voice cut through the afternoon air, sharp and demanding. "This might be our last family vacation." I gripped my coffee mug tighter, feeling the ceramic grow warm under my palms. My Saturday flannel shirt suddenly felt too heavy on my shoulders. Grace sat between us, her wedding ring catching the light as she twisted it nervously, her napkin clenched in her other hand. $20,000 for a week? The words came out steadier than I felt. That's more than many people earn in a year. Giles leaned forward, his tie loosened from earlier politeness, iPad thrust toward my face. The screen blazed with images of pristine beaches, infinity pools, and resort suites that probably cost more per night than most people's rent. "Look at this place, Leland. 4 Seasons Maui, oceanfront suites, private beach access." His finger jabbed at each photo. Judson and Ruby have never seen the Pacific Ocean. From the living room corner, the soft beeping of video games had grown quieter. My grandchildren were listening now, their 12 and 10-year-old ears tuned to the rising tension in adult voices. I opened my laptop, the familiar weight of numbers offering some comfort. "Let me show you what we're working with here." The spreadsheet filled the screen, columns of expenses, income, retirement funds carefully managed over decades of hard work. Grace shifted in her chair, leaning slightly toward her husband. That small movement felt like a crack forming in my chest. "Dad, we've been planning this for months," she said, her voice taking on that particular tone I'd heard more frequently since her marriage. "The kids are so excited." "I understand that, sweetheart. But maybe we could look at something closer to home. Wisconsin Dells has some beautiful resorts. Or Michigan's Gold Coast?" Giles scoffed, running his hand through his thinning hair. "Wisconsin? You want us to vacation in Wisconsin when we could be in paradise?" The food on our plates had grown cold. My famous pot roast sat untouched, gravy congealing around the edges. Grace's favorite green bean casserole remained barely disturbed. "It's not about the destination," I tried to explain, scrolling through years of family expenses. "It's about spending time together, making memories." "Memories?" Giles's laugh held no warmth. "What kind of memories are we making in some backwater tourist trap? Ruby deserves to see real luxury. Judson needs to experience the world." I heard Ruby's controller clatter to the floor. When I glanced toward the living room, both children had stopped playing entirely. Judson was staring at us over the back of the couch, his young face creased with confusion. "Maybe we could do Hawaii next year," I offered, trying to find middle ground. "Let me save up a bit more, plan it properly." "Next year?" Grace's voice rose for the first time. "Dad, next year Judson will be in high school. Their schedules will be impossible. This is our window." She was standing now, abandoning her position between us. The family photo from the side table somehow found its way into her hands. All of us at last Christmas, smiling around the tree I'd bought, under lights I'd hung, beside presents I'd purchased. "Your mother never would have hesitated," Giles said quietly, his words aimed like arrows. "Edith understood the value of family experiences." My breath caught. Bringing up Edith felt like crossing a line we'd never uncrossed before. "Don't!" The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't bring her into this." But Grace was nodding, the photo pressed against her chest. "He's right, Dad. Mom always said life was about experiences, not bank accounts." "Your mother also said we needed to live within our means," I replied, each word carefully measured. She understood the difference between wanting something and being able to afford it. Giles pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Look, I've already found flights, 700 each, round trip. The resort has a package deal if we book before June 1st. The numbers swirled in my head. Flights, hotel, food, activities, shopping. 20,000 was probably conservative. Ruby appeared at the dining room entrance, tears tracking down her cheeks. Are we not going to Hawaii, Grandpa? The question hung in the air like smoke. Judson had followed his sister, his arm protective around her shoulders. Their innocent faces held such hope, such trust, that the adults in their lives would work everything out. "We'll figure something out, sweetheart," I said gently. "No, we won't figure something out," Giles snapped. "We'll either go to Hawaii like a real family, or we'll spend another summer watching other kids talk about their amazing vacations while ours played in the backyard." Grace set the photo down carefully, her movements deliberate. "Dad, if you really love us, you'll find the money." Those words hit like physical blows. 5 years of grief, 5 years of trying to be both grandfather and grandmother to these children. 5 years of saying yes to every request, because I couldn't bear to see disappointment in their eyes. "Grace, honey, you know I love you all more than my own life." "Then prove it." Giles' smile was sharp. "Or maybe we need to start looking at other alternatives." The threat hung unspoken but clear. Other alternatives. I stared at my daughter's face, searching for the little girl who used to help me in the garage, who used to bring me drawings of cars and tools, who used to fall asleep on my lap while I read her bedtime stories. But that girl seemed very far away now. "You never think about our family." Grace's voice cracked like a whip across the dining room. "Always just about money." She was standing now, fully committed to her husband's side of the table. The salt I'd spilled earlier crunched under her shoes as she paced. "Grace, I worked all these years so that what? So you could control us with your wallet?" Her words came fast now, coached by the man beside her. Every gift, every check, every generous gesture comes with strings attached. I reached toward her, my weathered hand trembling slightly. "Sweetheart, that's not—" She pulled away from my touch as if I'd burned her. Giles whispered something in her ear, his breath close against her cheek. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw their effect. Grace's face hardened, her jaw setting in a line I recognized from her teenage years, but twisted now into something uglier. Ruby's sobs grew louder from the doorway. The sound of her distress seemed to pierce through everything else, the adult anger, the financial negotiations, the family politics that should never touch a 10-year-old's world. Mom wouldn't have been so selfish. Grace's accusation landed like a physical blow. The room went silent, except for Ruby's crying. Even Giles seemed surprised by the cruelty of that particular weapon. "Don't you dare," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Don't you dare use your mother's memory like that." But Grace pressed on, the family photo now clutched in her hands like evidence in a trial. She would have found a way. She always found a way to make things special for us. Judson had heard enough. He gently took his sister's hand and led her toward the stairs. "Come on, Ruby, let's go to your room." Their footsteps on the wooden steps sounded like a countdown to something terrible. "Your mother worked 2 jobs so we could afford your dance lessons," I said quietly, each word pulled from the deepest part of my grief. "She drove a car with no air conditioning for 6 years so you could go to that private school. She never once asked for anything she couldn't earn herself." "Well, maybe that's where she went wrong." Grace's words hit like ice water. "Maybe she should have asked for more." Giles nodded approvingly, his hand possessive on Grace's shoulder. "That's right, baby. Your father needs to understand that family comes first." "Family?" I looked at my daughter's face, searching for any trace of the child I'd raised. "Is that what this is? Threatening to take my grandchildren away if I don't pay for your vacation?" Grace lifted her chin defiantly. "I'm not threatening anything. I'm just saying that maybe it's time we started spending holidays with people who actually care about our happiness." The words hung in the air like a curse. 37 years of raising her, 5 years of helping her through grief, countless hours of babysitting, school pickups, emergency funds for car repairs and medical bills, all of it dismissed with a casual threat. "You know what your problem is, Dad?" Grace continued, and I could hear Giles's influence in every syllable. "You think love means keeping score? Real love means sacrifice without counting the cost. I've sacrificed plenty," I said quietly. "More than you'll ever know." "Have you?" She set the photo down hard on the table. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you've got plenty of money for yourself. Nice house, nice car, that expensive workshop out back." My workshop. The place I'd built engines for 40 years. The place where I'd taught Grace to change oil when she was 12. Now it was evidence of my selfishness. That workshop paid for your wedding, I reminded her, and the down payment on this house, and you'll never let us forget it, will you? Grace's voice rose to match her husband's earlier volume. Every conversation, every request, every family dinner comes back to how much you've spent on us. Giles stepped closer to his wife, presenting a united front. Maybe it's time you stop treating your family like a business expense, Leland. The accusation stung because it carried just enough truth to burrow deep. Had I been keeping score? Had my grief over Edith made me count every dollar, every favor, every gesture of love? Ruby's crying had stopped, but I could hear the murmur of Judson's young voice trying to comfort his sister. 12 years old, and he was already learning to clean up the messes adults made. Mom always said you were generous to a fault, Grace continued, her tone softening just enough to make the next blow land harder. But she also said you'd give people the shirt off your back and then complain about being cold. Another memory weaponized, another piece of my late wife's wisdom twisted into ammunition. Your mother never said that. The words came out flat, final. Didn't she? Grace tilted her head, studying my face. Maybe you just weren't listening. Giles checked his phone, the gesture casual but calculated. The resort booking deadline is tomorrow night. Just saying. Grace picked up her purse from the counter, movements sharp and decisive. Kids, come down here. We're leaving. Grace, wait. But she was already calling up the stairs, her voice bright and false. Ruby, Judson, get your things. Daddy's taking us out for ice cream. The children's footsteps thundered down the stairs, Ruby's face still blotchy from crying, Judson carrying both their backpacks with the careful responsibility of the older sibling. Are you okay, Grandpa? Ruby's small voice carried such genuine concern that it nearly broke what was left of my composure. I'm fine, sweetheart. You have fun with your parents. Grace ushered them toward the door, Giles following with satisfied confidence. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. Think about it, Dad. Really think about what matters more, your money or your family. The door closed behind them with a soft click that somehow sounded like the end of everything. The dining room table took 20 minutes to clear. Congealed gravy, untouched vegetables, my grandmother's good china stained with the residue of a meal nobody had finished. I scraped plates mechanically, each gesture a small act of restoration in a world that felt fundamentally broken. By 8 o'clock, I'd retreated to my garage workshop. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal shavings wrapped around me like an old friend's embrace. Rain drummed against the roof in steady rhythm. And I was grateful for the sound. It filled the silence that Grace's departure had left behind. I pulled the chain on the overhead light, fluorescent bulbs flickering to life and revealing my sanctuary. Pegboard walls lined with tools arranged in precise order. Workbenches clear, except for the framed photo of Edith and me, taken here 15 years ago. Her face smiled out from behind the glass, flour still dusting her apron from the cookies she'd been baking before wandering out to check on my progress with the neighbor's transmission. My hands moved automatically to the red tool drawer, sorting through socket sets that didn't need sorting. The cold metal felt real, substantial, honest in a way that human conversation apparently wasn't anymore. I found myself pulling out the small notebook I kept wedged between repair manuals. 5 years of careful record-keeping stared back at me in my own handwriting. Grace's wedding, $40,000. House down payment, $80,000. Private school for the kids, $24,000 per year, 6 years running. The numbers began to swim together as I flipped through pages of receipts and bank statements. Christmas gifts, birthday parties, emergency car repairs, medical bills, the Disney World trip when Ruby turned 8, the European cruise for Grace and Giles' 10th anniversary, last winter's ski vacation to Colorado. I pulled a forgotten receipt from my work jacket pocket. $100 for Ruby's piano lessons. Another one, crumpled and faded, $800 for Judson's baseball equipment. Small things that added up to enormous sums over time. The neighbor's Camry sat in the corner, hood raised, engine partially dismantled. Mrs. Chin had been apologetic about bothering me on a Saturday, but her car had died in the grocery store parking lot, and she couldn't afford the dealer's repair estimate. I had towed it home and promised to have it running by Monday. I walked over to the engine, running my hands along the familiar components. A blown head gasket, probably, nothing too complicated. The kind of work I could do in my sleep. the kind of problem that had clear solutions and predictable outcomes. Unlike family. My fingers traced the engine block while my mind wandered back to other conversations, other family dinners. Edith had tried to warn me about Grace's growing sense of entitlement, especially after she started dating Giles. "Leland, honey," she'd said one evening, maybe 3 months before the cancer took her. "You can't love someone out of their character flaws. Sometimes saying no is the kindest thing you can do." I'd brushed off her concern then, confident that my generosity was building bridges, strengthening bonds. Grace was my only child, my precious daughter, who'd inherited Edith's laugh and my stubborn streak. How could loving her too much possibly be wrong? But sitting in the garage now, surrounded by the tools of honest work, I began to see the pattern Edith had recognized. Every gift had been followed by a request for a bigger gift. Every financial rescue had been followed by a more expensive crisis. Every emergency had trained them to expect salvation from Grandpa's checkbook. I opened my laptop on the workbench, the spreadsheet glowing in the dim light. Total spent on Grace's family since her marriage, $847,000. Nearly $1 million in 15 years. The rain intensified, turning the garage into a cocoon of white noise and memory. I remembered the night Grace had called, crying because Giles had lost his job. "Dad, we might lose the house. The kids will have to change schools." Of course I'd helped. What kind of father wouldn't? I remembered Ruby's tears when her friends went to summer camp and she couldn't afford it. "Please, Grandpa, I'll be the only one who doesn't go." Of course I'd paid. What kind of grandfather would let his granddaughter feel left out? But now, examining the receipts and bank statements, I saw something else. Giles had found a new job 2 weeks after I'd covered their mortgage payments, but somehow forgot to mention it until I'd already paid 3 months ahead. Ruby's camp had been the most expensive option available, when perfectly good alternatives existed at half the price. Edith's voice echoed in the garage. Rain. Generosity without boundaries creates monsters, Leland. And the people you love most are often the ones who'll take the biggest bites. I pulled out the photo of our last Christmas together. Edith's last Christmas, though we didn't know it then. Grace was laughing at something Giles had whispered, her face bright with joy. The children were surrounded by an obscene pile of presents, each one carefully chosen and lovingly wrapped. But in the corner of the photo, barely visible, Edith sat quietly with a cup of tea, watching the chaos with tired eyes. She'd known then what I was only beginning to understand now. I closed the notebook and set it carefully beside Edith's photograph. Outside, the rain continued its steady percussion against the roof. Inside, surrounded by the honest simplicity of tools and engines, I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, and not sadness. Something quieter, but more dangerous. The realization that everything had to change. I picked up a wrench, testing its weight in my palm. Tomorrow was Sunday. Grace would probably call, maybe bring the kids by for lunch, acting as if nothing had happened. Giles would smile his practice smile and make casual conversation about the Hawaii booking deadline. But I wouldn't be the same man who'd sat at that dining room table today. That man had been foolish enough to believe love meant always saying yes. This man was beginning to understand that sometimes love meant learning to say no. Cold kitchen tiles shocked my bare feet as I shuffled toward the coffee maker. The digital clock on the microwave glowed 8 a.m., but I felt like I'd been awake for days. Sleep had come in fragments between the garage revelation and dawn's first light filtering through bedroom curtains. My bathrobe hung loose around my shoulders, the navy terry cloth, one Edith had bought me for our 30th anniversary. "You need something comfortable for Sunday mornings," she'd said, wrapping her arms around me from behind as I opened the gift. Now it felt too big, like everything else in this house built for a family that no longer existed. The coffee pot felt familiar in my hands, a small anchor of routine in a world that had shifted overnight. I measured grounds with the same silver scoop Edith had used for 20 years, following rituals that once brought us together, but now only emphasized the silence. Grace's childhood artwork still decorated the refrigerator door, faded construction paper flowers and crayon drawings of stick figure families. "I love you, Daddy," scrawled in purple marker across a Mother's Day card she'd made when she was 7. The little girl who'd created that card seemed like a different person entirely from the woman who'd stood in my dining room yesterday. I pulled her wedding photo from the side table, studying her face in the morning light. 27 years old, radiant in white silk, her smile genuine and full of hope. Giles stood beside her, already showing signs of the entitled smirk that would later consume their marriage. But Grace's eyes held pure joy that day, the same brightness I remembered from her childhood Christmases. "She's going to be fine, Leland," Edith had whispered during the reception, watching Grace dance with her new husband. "But keep an eye on him. Something about that boy doesn't sit right with me." I'd brushed off her concern then, too focused on Grace's happiness to notice the warning signs. Giles's casual comments about upgrading their lifestyle, his assumption that Edith and I would help out with the wedding expenses, the way he calculated every gift we gave, as if keeping score. The ceramic mug warmed my palms as I sat in Edith's chair at the kitchen table. She'd claimed this spot every morning for 15 years, reading the newspaper while I got ready for work. The view faced the backyard where Grace had played as a child, where we'd hosted birthday parties and graduation celebrations. "If you give her everything, she'll learn to expect everything," Edith had warned during one of our late-night conversations. Grace was 25 then, newly engaged, already hinting about needing help with the down payment on their first house. I'd argued that generosity strengthened family bonds. "She's our only child, Edith. Who else are we going to spoil?" "Spoiling and loving aren't the same thing," she'd replied, her fingers tracing patterns on the quilt she was mending. "Sometimes saying no is the most loving thing you can do." But I couldn't say no to Grace's bright smile, her excited phone calls about new opportunities and adventures. Every request seemed reasonable in isolation. Dance lessons, summer camps, college expenses, wedding costs, house payments. Individual acts of love that accumulated into something darker over time. The Mother's Day cards scattered across the table told the story of our relationship's evolution. Early ones featured handprint flowers and sincere declarations of love. Later cards became store-bought, signed hastily with brief messages. The most recent ones focused on gratitude for specific gifts rather than appreciation for the man who gave them. "Thank you for the cruise, Dad. You're the best." Last year's card felt hollow now, a transaction disguised as affection. Edith's recipe box sat on the counter, her handwriting faded, but still legible on index cards yellowed with age. Leland's favorite pot roast, Grace's birthday cake, extra chocolate. Each card represented Sunday dinners when our table overflowed with laughter instead of arguments. I remembered the morning Edith couldn't get out of bed, cancer finally claiming the strength she'd fought to maintain. Grace had visited once during those final weeks, staying less than an hour because Ruby had a recital and Judson had practice. "She's busy with her own life now," I'd told Edith, making excuses for our daughter's absence. "Being busy isn't the same as being important," Edith had replied, her voice barely a whisper. "When I'm gone, she'll need you to be stronger than you've been. Don't let them take advantage of your good heart." I'd promised I'd be careful, but Edith's death had shattered my resolve. Grace's tears at the funeral, her children's confusion about losing their grandmother, the overwhelming emptiness of the house, all of it made saying yes easier than setting boundaries. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 times. Outside, neighbors were beginning their Sunday routines. I should call Grace, apologize for yesterday's argument, arrange the usual Sunday lunch. But the thought of sitting across from Giles again, pretending yesterday hadn't happened, felt impossible. Instead, I pulled out Grace's baby book from the kitchen drawer, where Edith had always kept it. Photos of first steps, first words, first day of school, the little girl who'd helped me in the garage, who'd brought me drawings of cars and tools, who'd fallen asleep on my lap while I read her bedtime stories. "I want to be just like you when I grow up, Daddy," she declared at age 6, wearing my oversized work shirt and carrying my smallest wrench. Now, she wanted to be like Giles instead. I closed the book and straightened my shoulders. The kitchen felt less cold now, filled with memories of who Grace used to be and who Edith had always been. My wife's wisdom echoed in the morning silence. Sometimes love required strength instead of surrender. The coffee mug sat empty in my hands, but my resolve felt full for the first time in years. The air wrench's sharp percussion echoed through my shop as I torqued the last lug nut on Mrs. Patterson's Honda. Monday morning had brought the usual parade of brake jobs and oil changes, honest work that kept my hands busy while my mind processed Sunday's revelations. The radio played classic rock at low volume, mixing with familiar sounds of productivity. Mike worked 2 bays over, whistling while he rotated tires on a pickup truck. Normal rhythms of a normal day, until Giles's BMW pulled into the customer parking area at 11 sharp. He stepped through my shop door like he owned the place, dress shoes clicking against concrete stained with decades of automotive fluids. His casual confidence immediately set my teeth on edge. This was the first time he'd visited my workplace in 15 years of marriage to my daughter. "Morning, Leland." He settled into my office chair without invitation, legs crossed, completely comfortable in a space where he clearly didn't belong. I lowered the Honda's hood, wiping my hands on a shop rag while studying his unexpected presence. "Giles, this is a surprise. Just wanted to touch base about our travel arrangements." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages with theatrical casualness. "Grace and I discussed the situation, and we've reached a decision about Hawaii." The way he said our travel arrangements made my jaw clench. Not "your generous gift" or "the vacation you're funding," as if we were business partners dividing up assets. What kind of decision? His smile carried the particular smugness I'd learned to hate over the years. "We've decided 4 people is optimal for this kind of trip. You understand? Economics, logistics, that sort of thing." I set down my wrench carefully, each movement deliberate. "Economics of my money without me? Well, technically you're still contributing financially, just not physically participating." He shrugged as if explaining simple arithmetic. "Think of it as investing in family memories you'll treasure forever." The shop bell chimed as Mrs. Patterson entered to collect her car keys. Giles glanced at her dismissively, then returned to his phone as if she were invisible. I forced a professional smile and completed the transaction, handing over keys and explaining the repair work while my son-in-law sat in my chair, texting. "Everything looks good, Mrs. Patterson. Call if you have any concerns." After she left, silence stretched between us, except for the radio's distant classic rock and Mike's continued whistling. Giles seemed oblivious to the tension, still scrolling through his phone with casual arrogance. "So, you've decided," I said finally, "to take a vacation I'm paying for without inviting me." "Exactly." His enthusiasm made the betrayal somehow worse. "I knew you'd understand once we explained the reasoning. 4 people fit perfectly in the presidential suite. 5 would be crowded." "The presidential suite?" He looked up from his phone, genuinely puzzled by my tone. "Of course. You booked the best accommodations, right? We assumed you'd want us to have the full luxury experience." The numbers swirled in my head. Presidential suite, first-class flights, helicopter tours, restaurant reservations, $28,000 for a family vacation that would exclude the man paying for it. And what about Ruby and Judson? Don't they expect their grandfather to be there? Kids are adaptable. They'll have such amazing experiences, they won't even notice. He resumed typing, fingers flying across his screen. "Besides, this gives you a week of peace and quiet. When was the last time you had the house to yourself?" 5 years. Since Edith died and left me alone with my grief and my checkbook, funding other people's happiness while my own withered away. Mike poked his head into the office area, grease smudged across his work shirt. "Boss, you need me to stay for the Fletcher transmission job, or can I head out for lunch?" "Go ahead, Mike. Take the afternoon if you want." After he left, Giles leaned back in my chair with proprietary comfort. "See? This works out perfectly. You get downtime, we get paradise, win-win situation." "Win-win," I repeated, tasting the bitter irony. "I've already updated the airline about the passenger change. Managed to get a partial refund on your ticket. $500 credit applied to the hotel spa treatments." He showed me his phone screen as if presenting a gift. "Grace is so excited about the couples massage package." Couples massage? With money refunded from the grandfather's canceled ticket. The shop felt smaller suddenly, walls closing in around the magnitude of their casual cruelty. This wasn't just about Hawaii anymore. This was about 15 years of systematic reduction, from family patriarch to family ATM, from respected elder to discarded benefactor. "Of course, we'll bring you back something special from Maui. Maybe one of those wooden bowls or some macadamia nuts." His tone suggested he was doing me a tremendous favor. A customer's car backfired in the parking lot, the sharp sound making us both look toward the window. When I turned back, Giles was checking his watch with obvious impatience. "Anyway, I should get back to the office. Just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page about the arrangements." He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his slacks. The kids are incredibly grateful, by the way. Ruby keeps talking about swimming with dolphins. Swimming with dolphins I paid for her to see without me. Right, see, you get it. His smile was brilliant and empty. Grace said you'd come around once you understood the logic. He headed toward the door, then paused as if remembering something important. Oh, and Leland? We'll need the rental car information when we land. Convertible if possible. The kids want that authentic island experience. The door chimed his exit, leaving me alone among the tools and machinery that had never betrayed me. Outside, his BMW pulled smoothly into traffic, carrying him back to a world where other people's money funded his family's dreams, while those people sat home alone. I picked up my wrench, testing its familiar weight. Honest tool for honest work, unlike the dishonest people who just redefine family loyalty as economic convenience. The afternoon stretched ahead, empty now that Mike had left early. Time enough to think, to plan, to consider what authentic island experiences really cost when you're the one paying for everyone else's paradise. 2.5 hours had passed since Giles left, time I'd spent mechanically completing oil changes and brake inspections, while my mind churned through implications of his casual cruelty. At 2 o'clock, I sent Mike home early, claiming I needed to catch up on paperwork. The truth was simpler. I needed privacy for the thoughts taking shape in the quiet spaces between wrench turns and the engine diagnostics. My office felt different with the closed sign flipped and the front door locked. Afternoon sunlight sliced through Venetian blinds, creating prison bar shadows across my metal desk, cluttered with invoices, family photos, and the laptop that would soon become my weapon of choice. I pulled the travel folder from my filing cabinet, spreading documents across the desk like evidence at a crime scene. Every confirmation bore my name, every credit card charge traced back to my accounts. Hotel reservations, flight confirmations, activity bookings, rental car agreements, a paper trail of power they'd forgotten I possessed. The presidential suite confirmation made me laugh out loud, a sound with no humor in it. $4,000 per night for 7 nights. $28,000 total for oceanfront luxury they'd enjoy, while the man funding it sat home alone, grateful for his peace and quiet. I opened my laptop and navigated to the airline's website. A few clicks confirmed what I'd suspected. Complete control over all 5 tickets. Changeable, refundable, cancelable. The customer service number practically begged to be dialed. Hawaiian Airlines, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to verify my cancellation rights for a group booking. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, professional rather than vengeful. Certainly, sir. Can I have your confirmation number? The process took less than 5 minutes. Full refund available up to 24 hours before departure. No penalties, no questions asked, no notifications to other passengers unless specifically requested. The airline wanted to keep customers happy, even customers reconsidering expensive mistakes. I spread more documents across my desk, creating a comprehensive picture of the financial empire I had accidentally built around my daughter's family. Previous vacation receipts, school tuition payments, emergency loans that became permanent gifts. The numbers told a story of systematic exploitation disguised as family loyalty. Hawaii total $28,400, Disney World $12,000, European cruise $18,000, Colorado ski vacation $8,500, Grace's emergency car repair $6,000, Judson's baseball equipment $2,300, Ruby's piano lessons $3,600. Each receipt represented a conversation where my generosity had been carefully leveraged, where guilt and love had been weaponized against my better judgment. The kids will be so disappointed. We can't afford it without your help. I hate asking, but you're the only one who understands family importance. I found a forgotten receipt tucked behind my insurance papers, $5,000 for Grace's 40th birthday party last year. The same party where Giles had publicly thanked me for my continued investment in family happiness, as if my love were a portfolio requiring management. The hotel confirmation glowed on my laptop screen. Presidential suite with private lanai, infinity pool access, concierge service, daily champagne delivery. Everything designed for maximum luxury, maximum expense, maximum gratitude from people who'd decided I was too burdensome to actually join them. I picked up my phone, then set it down again, called the hotel, hung up before it connected, opened my email, closed it without typing. The power sat in my hands like a loaded weapon I wasn't sure I was ready to fire. Edith's voice echoed from memory. Consequences aren't cruelty, Leland. Sometimes they're the only way people learn to value what they have. But the grandchildren's faces complicated everything. Ruby's excitement about dolphins, Judson's careful collection of travel brochures, their innocent expectation that Grandpa's magic would create another perfect family adventure. They didn't understand the financial mechanics, the emotional manipulation, the casual dismissal of the man who made their dreams possible. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and began writing lists, phone numbers to call, reservations to modify, alternatives to consider. Each option carried different levels of justice, different degrees of consequence, different amounts of collateral damage to innocent parties. Option 1, complete cancellation, maximum impact, maximum lesson, maximum trauma for the children. Option 2, downgrade everything, coach flights, budget hotel, rental sedan instead of convertible, humiliation without complete destruction. Option 3, geographical substitution, same budget, different destination, Wisconsin Dells instead of Maui, punishment disguised as practicality. Each choice carried the weight of permanent relationship damage. Grace would never forgive direct sabotage. Giles would weaponize any action against me. The grandchildren would inherit whatever poison their parents chose to spread. But doing nothing meant accepting a new status quo, where my wallet was welcome and my presence was not, where family meant obligation without inclusion, where love was measured in canceled flights and refunded deposits. The office clock showed 3:30, 6 hours until the West Coast booking offices closed, plenty of time to make calls that couldn't be unmade. My phone sat silent, no check-ins from Grace, no excitement from the grandchildren, no acknowledgement that anything had changed between Saturday's argument and today's dismissal. I opened a new browser window and began researching alternatives. Last-minute deals, package modifications, creative solutions that would teach necessary lessons without destroying innocent dreams. The screen filled with possibilities, each one requiring courage I wasn't sure I possessed. But Giles's smug confidence kept replaying in my memory. His casual assumption that I'd accept exclusion with gratitude, his complete indifference to the emotional cost of his economic logic. I picked up my pen and began writing specific names and numbers on the legal pad, plans taking shape in careful handwriting that couldn't be accidentally deleted or traced through internet searches. Time to find out what authentic island experiences really cost when you're not the one controlling the credit cards. Tuesday morning arrived with the weight of certainty I hadn't felt in years. I'd spent Monday evening at home, spreading travel documents across my kitchen table like battle plans, reviewing every confirmation number, every policy detail, every weapon in my unexpected arsenal. By 7:30, I was at the shop with my laptop, phone, and a yellow legal pad filled with systematic lists. Mike got his walking papers for the day, told him we were doing inventory and I needed absolute privacy. The private business do not disturb sign went up on my office door, and I settled into the most important workday of my life. 8 o'clock sharp, I dialed Hawaiian Airlines. Hawaiian Airlines customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I assist you today? I need to cancel 5 first-class tickets. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Confirmation number H77492B8. Let me pull that up, Mr. Morrison. I see 5 tickets for June 2nd departure, Chicago to Honolulu. Her typing echoed through the phone. Is there a family emergency, sir? Change of plans. What's my refund amount? Well, since these are refundable first-class fares purchased more than 24 hours ago, you'll receive full credit. That comes to $14,350 back to your credit card. $14,000! Just like that. I wrote the confirmation number on my legal pad, feeling something loosen in my chest. Processing time is 3 to 5 business days. Is there anything else I can help you with today? That'll do it. Thank you, Jennifer. 1 down, 4 major cancellations to go. The hotel proved more complicated. Their customer service representative, David, seemed genuinely distressed about losing such an expensive booking. Mr. Morrison, I show 7 nights in our presidential suite at $4,000 per night. Sir, That's a $28,000 reservation. Are you certain you want to cancel? Completely certain. We could offer you a partial credit instead. Maybe move the dates to later in the year. The presidential suite is quite popular, and frankly, sir, it's the most luxurious accommodation we offer. I'm sure it is. Cancel it. His sigh carried through the phone lines. Very well. Full refund of $28,000. Processing in 5 to 7 business days. Reference number PS 2025-YRS847. $28,000 back in my account. Money they'd planned to spend while excluding the man who earned it. The luxury SUV rental took less than 10 minutes. $800 refunded. No questions asked. The helicopter tour company seemed disappointed but professional. $3,000 for private island tours, another easy cancellation. By 11:30, I was making calls to restaurant reservations, spa appointments, snorkeling excursions. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Polite inquiry about the reason for cancellation. Offers of alternative dates, eventual acceptance of my decision. Maui Ocean Adventures. This is Sarah speaking. I need to cancel a family snorkeling package for June 3rd. Oh no, the whale watching and snorkeling combo? That's one of our most popular family experiences. May I ask if there's been an emergency? Family situation changed. I'm so sorry to hear that. Full refund of $1,200 will be processed within 48 hours. Each canceled activity felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity. They'd planned to spend my money on experiences I'd never see, adventures I'd funded but been banned from enjoying. Lunch was a sandwich at my desk, barely tasted between phone calls. By 2 o'clock, I was calling the travel insurance company, modifying policies I no longer needed. Morrison Insurance Agency, this is Patricia. How can I help you? I need to cancel comprehensive travel insurance for 5 people. Policy number TI449-2025M. Let me review your policy details. Oh my, this covers medical emergencies, trip cancellations, lost luggage. Quite comprehensive for a family of 5 traveling to Hawaii. Are you sure you want to cancel? The trip's been canceled. No need for the insurance. I see. Premium refund of $450 will be processed immediately. The final call came at 3 o'clock, confirming that every single reservation had been canceled, every deposit refunded, every trace of their Hawaiian paradise systematically erased. My legal pad showed the damage. $46,650 in total refunds processing back to my accounts. Nearly $50,000 they'd assumed would fund their luxury vacation without me. I leaned back in my office chair, surrounded by canceled confirmations and refund receipts. The afternoon sun slanted through my blinds, casting long shadows across documents that represented the complete dismantling of their entitled expectations. My phone buzzed with a text message. Grace's name appeared on the screen, but I didn't read it. Not yet. Let them discover their paradise had vanished the same way they'd made me vanish from their plans, suddenly, completely without consultation or consideration. The shop felt quieter now, filled only with the hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of traffic. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday, except nothing about this day had been normal. I gathered the cancellation confirmations into a neat pile, filed them in chronological order, and locked them in my desk drawer. Evidence of the day I'd learned to say no, finally and completely. 6 o'clock arrived with a sense of completion I hadn't felt since Edith's death. Every call made, every cancellation confirmed, every dollar reclaimed from people who'd taken my generosity for granted. Time to go home and wait for their world to fall apart the way mine had on Saturday afternoon. Sleep had been impossible. I'd returned home Tuesday evening to find 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages, all ignored while I heated a frozen dinner and tried to convince myself I'd done the right thing. By 5:30 Wednesday morning, I gave up pretending sleep would come. The kitchen felt cold despite the warm May weather, shadows long across linoleum that had witnessed countless family breakfasts in happier times. Coffee brewing, I sat at Edith's place and let the guilt wash over me like a tide I couldn't outrun. The grandchildren don't deserve this, I whispered to the empty room, my voice hoarse from a night of internal arguments. But then I remembered Ruby's confused face during Saturday's argument, Judson's protective arm around his sister's shoulders. They'd been casualties of their parents' greed long before I'd canceled a single reservation. The photo album lay open on the counter where I'd left it the night before. Grace at 7, gap-toothed and grinning, beside a Christmas tree laden with presents I'd bought. Grace at 12, proudly displaying the bicycle I'd surprised her with for making honor roll. Grace at 16, rolling her eyes at my embarrassing dad jokes but still hugging me tight after her school play. When had that grateful, loving child transformed into the woman who'd stood in my dining room and used her dead mother's memory as a weapon? I found my phone buried under yesterday's mail, screen showing 43 missed calls and 67 unread messages. The preview lines made my stomach clench. "Dad, we need to talk. The hotel called, said you canceled everything. How could you do this to us?" But tucked between the angry messages were older ones I'd saved, texts that told a different story. Last Christmas, "Dad, Ruby really wanted the American Girl doll, the expensive one. You understand? Easter, Judson needs new baseball gear, the good stuff, not the cheap brands." Mother's Day, "Wish Mom was still here. She never would have made us beg for basic family experiences." Each message had seemed reasonable in isolation, a loving grandfather helping his family live better lives. Together, they formed a pattern of emotional manipulation that made my chest tight with recognition. I pulled out a stack of receipts from the junk drawer, bills I'd paid that they'd never acknowledged. Grace's emergency root canal, $3,200. Giles's car transmission repair, $4,800. Ruby's private art lessons, one session fee $100. Judson's summer camp, $2,900. Never a thank you note. Never a birthday card that mentioned my generosity rather than asking for more. Never an invitation to dinner that didn't come with a hidden agenda. The sunrise painted the kitchen walls gold, same light that had warmed family breakfasts when Edith was alive. But those Sunday mornings felt like artifacts from someone else's life, before grief made me desperate for connection, before loneliness made me confuse buying love with earning it. My hands shook as I opened the laptop, muscle memory navigating to travel websites I'd avoided for years. Hawaii packages glowed on the screen, promises of paradise for people brave enough to claim their own happiness. "Edith, what would you do?" I asked the empty kitchen. But I knew the answer. She'd warned me about this exact situation, seen it coming years before I'd admitted the truth. "Generous without boundaries creates monsters," she'd said. "And the people you love most will often be the hungriest monsters of all." Grace's transformation hadn't happened overnight. It had been gradual, each granted request making the next demand seem reasonable. Each financial rescue teaching her that Dad's money solved every problem, that his feelings were less important than her convenience. I'd enabled every step of her entitlement, funded every lesson in selfishness, rewarded every casual cruelty with another check, another vacation, another expensive gift that proved my love through dollars rather than demanding respect. The wedding photos tucked behind family portraits showed the beginning of the end. Grace radiant in white, Giles calculating even on his wedding day, already eyeing my checkbook like a future inheritance to be spent immediately. 15 years of marriage had only refined their technique. Grace learned to phrase demands as family needs. Giles mastered the art of making gratitude sound like burden. Together, they'd transformed my generosity from gift into obligation, my love from blessing into business transaction. But canceling their vacation felt like amputating part of myself. Ruby would cry, Judson would look at me with confusion and betrayal. Grace would paint me as the villain in their family story, the selfish grandfather who destroyed their happiness out of spite. Except, it wasn't spite, it was self-preservation. I opened a new browser tab and typed, "Flights to Honolulu." First-class seats available on tonight's red-eye, premium hotels with ocean views, rental cars that I'd drive alone while making my own memories. Same destination they'd planned to visit without me. Same paradise, different perspective. Instead of funding someone else's happiness while nursing my resentment at home, I could create my own. My finger hovered over the Book Now button as my phone buzzed with another incoming call. Grace's name flashed on the screen, followed immediately by Giles's number when I declined. They had discovered their canceled paradise. Now they wanted explanations, negotiations, emergency funding to restore what I had destroyed. The same pattern we'd danced for years, their crisis, my solution, their gratitude until the next demand. But this time felt different. This time, I had a one-way ticket to Honolulu glowing on my laptop screen and the courage to click Confirm Purchase. 3 o'clock a Wednesday afternoon found me staring at a confirmation email that felt like a declaration of independence. United Flight 847 to Honolulu, departing O'Hare at 9:30 p.m. First class seat 2A, purchased with the same credit card that had just been refunded $46,150 from canceled family reservations. The timing was perfect, cruel and perfect. While Grace and Giles scrambled to understand their vanished vacation, I'd be 37,000 feet above the Pacific, sipping champagne and watching movies they'd never see. Packing took less than an hour. Vacation clothes I hadn't worn since Edith's death. Comfortable shoes for walking beaches alone. The good cologne she'd bought me for our last anniversary. I left the family photos on my dresser, but took the small frame picture of Edith and me in Yellowstone, our faces bright with the joy of people who'd never imagined loneliness. The house felt different as I adjusted the thermostat and arranged for mail holds. Quieter, maybe, or just pregnant with the possibility of peace I hadn't experienced in 5 years. Mrs. Patterson next door got the spare key and promised to keep an eye on things, her elderly face creased with concern about my sudden business trip. Chicago traffic cooperated for once. Lakeshore Drive flowing smoothly toward O'Hare, while classic rock played on the radio. My phone sat silent in the passenger seat. I'd switched it to airplane mode after the 15th unanswered call from Grace, cutting myself off from their growing panic with the efficiency of someone who'd finally learned to protect himself. The United First Class check-in counter felt like entering another world. No lines, no stress, just professional smiles and genuine courtesy from people who treated travel like luxury instead of logistical nightmare. "Mr. Morrison, traveling alone this evening?" The agent's fingers flew across her keyboard, upgrading my experience with each keystroke. "I see you're in 2A. Excellent choice. The food service tonight is exceptional, and we have your favorite newspapers available." "First time to Hawaii in 20 years, I admitted, accepting the boarding passes that felt like tickets to freedom. "How wonderful. Business or pleasure?" "Pleasure, definitely pleasure." Security moved quickly through the first-class lane, TSA officers efficient and respectful. The departure lounge buzzed with Wednesday evening energy, business travelers heading home, families starting vacations, couples celebrating anniversaries with trips their grandfathers hadn't funded and then been excluded from. I claimed a quiet corner near the gate and watched other passengers, wondering how many were traveling with money they'd earned versus money they'd manipulated from relatives. How many had excluded the people who'd made their trips possible? The departure board showed flights to destinations I'd never seen: London, Tokyo, Sydney, Rome, places Edith and I had dreamed of visiting someday before cancer stole our somedays and left me funding other people's adventures instead of creating my own. But tonight was different. Tonight I was the one boarding first, settling into leather seats wide enough for comfort, accepting hot towels and champagne from flight attendants who seemed genuinely pleased to serve passengers who'd chosen luxury for themselves. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Morrison. Your first time in first class?" "Not exactly, but my first time traveling alone." The words tasted like truth and freedom. The cabin filled slowly with other first-class passengers, businessmen with expensive watches, couples celebrating special occasions, a few solo travelers like myself who decided their own happiness deserved premium treatment. As we pushed back from the gate, I allowed myself one glance at my phone before powering it off completely. 63 missed calls, 127 unread messages, the desperate digital noise of people discovering that their financial puppet had cut his own strings. But their panic couldn't reach me at 37,000 feet. Their demands couldn't follow me across the Pacific. Their entitled expectations couldn't survive in the thin air where I'd finally learned to breathe freely. The engine spun up, that familiar sound of departure that had soundtracked other people's adventures for too many years. Chicago's lights spread below us like a circuit board, each glow representing someone else's life, someone else's choices, someone else's freedom to say no to family obligations disguised as love. The flight attendant appeared with champagne and a warm smile. "To Hawaii, Mr. Morrison. What's the special occasion?" I accepted the glass and looked out at the darkness rushing past my window, city lights fading into the vast emptiness of a journey I'd chosen for myself. Learning to live again, I said, and meant every word. The plane climbed toward stars I'd forgotten how to see, carrying me away from a family who'd mistaken my wallet for my worth, toward a paradise they'd never know I'd found without them. Hawaiian sunshine streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the presidential suite, warming my face as consciousness returned slowly, peacefully, for the first time in weeks. 8 o'clock island time meant 1 in the afternoon back in Chicago, right about when Grace and Giles should be discovering their canceled paradise at O'Hare. The suite sprawled around me like something from a travel magazine dream. Marble bathroom with soaking tub, private balcony overlooking Waikiki Beach, sitting area larger than most people's living rooms. Every detail screamed luxury, from the Egyptian cotton sheets to the complimentary champagne chilling beside a fruit arrangement I hadn't ordered. "Welcome to the Four Seasons, Mr. Morrison," the night manager had said during my midnight check-in. "We've upgraded you to our presidential suite, our finest accommodations. Is there anything special we can arrange for your stay?" "Just peace and quiet," I'd replied, exhaustion from travel mixing with satisfaction from executed justice. Now, 12 hours later, that peace felt like medicine I'd forgotten I needed. Room service breakfast arrived on schedule. Fresh pineapple, Kona coffee, macadamia, nut pancakes I'd never have ordered back home. The server arranged everything on my balcony table without disturbing the morning's natural symphony. Waves against reef, palm fronds rustling, myna birds chattering in languages I didn't need to understand. My phone sat face down on the bedside table, deliberately ignored since boarding the plane. 3 missed calls when I'd glanced at it earlier, but I wasn't ready for their desperation yet. Let them taste uncertainty the way I'd tasted exclusion. The hotel concierge called around 9:30, voice professionally cheerful despite the early hour. "Mr. Morrison? This is James from Guest Services. I wanted to personally ensure everything meets your expectations. Exceeds them, actually. What's available for activities today?" "Well, we typically recommend our couples packages for guests in the presidential suite, but I see you're traveling solo. Perhaps a private beach experience, snorkeling with our marine biologist, helicopter tour of the island, all of it. Book whatever you think a man celebrating his independence might enjoy." "Independence, sir?" "Long story. Let's just say I'm finally doing things my way." By 10 o'clock I was walking barefoot on private beach sand, collecting shells that would have fascinated Ruby, watching sea turtles that would have amazed Judson. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was experiencing the family vacation they'd planned without me, seeing sights they'd assumed I'd fund but never witness. A beach attendant approached with bottled water and towels, his weathered face kind beneath a resort visor. "Beautiful morning, yeah? First time to Hawaii?" "First time doing anything just for myself in 5 years." "Ah, you celebrating something special then?" "Very special. Learning to say no to people who take advantage of kindness." He nodded with the wisdom of someone who'd heard similar stories. "Island time teaches patience, brother. Sometimes mainland folks, they forget families supposed to support each other, not just take from each other." My phone buzzed insistently in the beach bag. 8 missed calls now, probably 9 by the time I checked again. But I wasn't checking again, not yet. Let them experience the helplessness I'd felt, sitting at my dining room table while they redistributed my affection into economic categories. The hotel spa called while I was floating in the infinity pool, water warm as bathwater. Chicago's problems feeling very far away. "Mr. Morrison, we have availability for our signature Hawaiian healing treatment at 11:30. Hot stones, aromatherapy, complete relaxation package." "Perfect. And can you hold my phone during the treatment? I don't want any interruptions." "Of course, sir. We specialize in helping guests disconnect from outside stress." Outside stress. That was one way to describe 15 years of financial manipulation disguised as family loyalty. Lunch arrived poolside, fresh ahi tuna, tropical fruit salad, mai tai that tasted like vacation distilled into liquid form. The server, a young woman with flowers in her hair, seemed genuinely pleased to serve someone enjoying solitude. "You seem so peaceful, Mr. Morrison. Most of our guests are rushing around, trying to see everything, take pictures for social media. You're just present." "First time I've been present anywhere in a long time." "That's beautiful. The islands have a way of showing people what they really need versus what they think they want." What I'd thought I wanted was my family's love and gratitude. What I'd actually needed was their respect and basic human decency. The islands were indeed teaching me the difference. My phone counter hit 15 missed calls during the spa treatment, then 23 during my afternoon nap in a private cabana. The massage therapist had been right about disconnecting. Each ignored ring felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity from people who'd treated it as their personal property. As the sun began its descent toward the Pacific horizon, painting the sky in colors that would have inspired Edith's artistic soul, I finally felt ready to quantify their desperation. 27 missed calls, dozens of text message previews I didn't need to read. Emergency. Please call. Dad, what did you do? But I wasn't their emergency contact anymore. I wasn't their automatic solution to problems they'd created by assuming my wallet came without attached human feelings. The beach dinner service was setting up my table when my phone buzzed with call number 30. I watched it ring, watched it go to voicemail, watched the missed call counter climb to numbers that would have panicked me a week ago. Now they just felt like validation that consequences were finally, beautifully, working exactly as intended. The massage table felt like floating on clouds as my phone vibrated against the spa attendant's desk across the room. Call 35, 36, 37. Each buzz a small victory in a war I'd finally learned to fight back. Your phone's been quite busy, Mr. Morrison, Maria, my massage therapist, mentioned as she worked knots from shoulders that had carried family burden for too many years. Family crisis back home, I murmured into the face rest. They'll figure it out eventually. What they needed to figure out was simple. Chicago time meant they'd been at O'Hare for 3 hours now, discovering that presidential suites and first-class flights existed only in their entitled imagination. Reality had sharp edges when you couldn't cushion it with someone else's credit cards. By the time my treatment ended, the counter showed 42 missed calls. I handed the phone back to Maria with genuine gratitude. Thank you for keeping that quiet. First peaceful hour I've had in months. De nada. Sometimes the best medicine is letting problems solve themselves without our help. Wise woman. Problems like Grace and Giles had been solving themselves at my expense for 15 years, but today they'd have to find solutions without access to Grandpa's emergency funds. The private beach beckoned again, afternoon sun perfect for snorkeling among tropical fish that sparkled like living jewels. I buried my phone deep in a beach bag and waded into water warmer than most baths, leaving 47 missed calls on the sand behind me. Underwater, silence took on new meaning. No ringing phones, no demanding voices, no guilt-tripped conversations about family obligations. Just me and fish that had never asked me for money, coral that thrived without my financial intervention, an ocean that existed beautifully without my constant worry about everyone else's happiness. When I surfaced an hour later, waterlogged and content, my phone showed 53 missed calls. The progression told its own story. Desperation building, panic setting in, family finally understanding what powerlessness felt like from the victim's perspective. Lunch at the beachside restaurant came with a view of paradise and the satisfaction of imagining their airport meltdown. Grace would be crying, real tears now, not the manipulative kind she'd perfected for extracting sympathy dollars. Giles would be frantically calling his boss, explaining why he wouldn't be attending that important Monday meeting from a Hawaiian beach. The children would be confused, disappointed, learning their first hard lesson about consequences hitting innocent bystanders. Another Mai Tai, sir? The server's interruption was welcome. Make it a double. I'm celebrating. Oh? Special occasion? The most special. I'm finally learning to put myself first. Call 57 came during dessert. Coconut ice cream that melted on my tongue like frozen tropical dreams. I watched my phone vibrate against the wooden table, then deliberately ordered coffee and asked about tomorrow's helicopter tour. Let it ring. Let them feel ignored the way I'd felt dismissed. Then, something interesting happened. The calls stopped. 57 missed calls, then silence. Complete, beautiful, telling silence that meant they'd finally given up, trying to reach the man whose money they wanted, but whose presence they'd rejected. I checked my watch. 4:30 Hawaiian time, 9:30, Chicago evening. They were home now, sitting in their overpriced suburban house that I'd helped finance, planning their next move in a chess game where they'd just discovered I controlled more pieces than they'd realized. The sunset painted Waikiki Beach in shades of gold and coral as I walked back to my suite, phone still silent in my pocket. My reflection in the elevator's polished steel showed a man I barely recognized, relaxed, tanned after just one day, wearing a Hawaiian shirt I'd bought at the hotel shop because it felt like shedding old skin. Room service dinner arrived as the sky darkened, bringing star visibility impossible in light-polluted Chicago. Fresh fish I couldn't pronounce, tropical vegetables that tasted like sunshine, wine that paired perfectly with victory, served at the perfect temperature. "Will there be anything else tonight, Mr. Morrison?" the server asked, clearing plates that had held the best meal I'd eaten in memory. "Tomorrow I'd like to extend my stay. Another 3 days should do it." "Certainly, sir. Enjoying your vacation?" "More than I imagined possible." After he left, I sat on my private balcony with a glass of wine and my finally silent phone. 57 calls, then nothing. They'd exhausted their desperation and moved on to planning mode, probably strategizing how to guilt me into restored funding when I returned. But the man boarding that plane Wednesday night was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned that saying no felt better than being used. Someone who'd discovered that paradise was sweeter when you chose it yourself, instead of funding it for people who excluded you from the experience. The hotel's concierge called as I prepared for bed, voice professionally cheerful. "Mr. Morrison, I wanted to confirm your extended stay and discuss additional experiences. We have a private island excursion tomorrow, if you're interested. Book it, and anything else you'd recommend for a man who's finally doing exactly what he wants." "With pleasure, sir. It sounds like you're having the vacation of a lifetime." He was right. It was the vacation of my lifetime, the one I'd paid for but never expected to take, in paradise they'd planned to enjoy without me. Sweet dreams came easily in Egyptian cotton sheets, accompanied by the sound of waves and the satisfaction of 57 unanswered calls that had finally, blessedly, stopped ringing. The taxi's engine ticked as it cooled in my driveway, Hawaiian luggage scattered around my feet, like evidence of a crime I'd thoroughly enjoyed committing. A week of extended paradise had painted my face bronze and filled my lungs with confidence I'd forgotten I could breathe. Grace's car sat parked across the street, engine running, waiting. They'd been watching for my return like creditors stalking a debtor, but the man stepping out of that cab bore little resemblance to the broken grandfather who'd fled Chicago 10 days ago. My new Hawaiian shirt, royal blue with white palm trees, caught the evening light as I gathered my bags. No more flannel shirts, no more apologetic posture, no more automatic yes to every family demand. The islands had taught me the difference between generous and gullible, and I'd been a very slow student until now. Grace emerged from the car first, face flushed with 10 days of accumulated rage and public humiliation. Giles followed, his usual smugness replaced by something that looked dangerously close to desperation. The children remained in the back seat, faces pressed against windows, afraid to venture into the war zone their parents had created. "How could you do this to us?" Grace's voice cracked across the suburban evening, loud enough for Mrs. Patterson to peek through her curtains. I set down my luggage deliberately, testing the weight of my new authority. "The same way you did it to me, sweetheart, except I warned you first. Things are different now." "Different?" Giles stepped forward, his usual controlling confidence replaced by barely contained panic. "This is outrageous. We had reservations, commitments, plans. You had my money and my exclusion." Each word came out calm, measured, final. I simply corrected the math. Grace's eyes darted between my tanned face and the resort luggage tag still attached to my bags. "You went to Hawaii. You went without us. First class, presidential suite, private beach access, everything you planned to enjoy while I sat home alone, grateful for my peace and quiet." I picked up my suitcase, noting how light it felt compared to 15 years of carrying their financial burden. Turns out peace and quiet are even better when accompanied by room service and ocean views. "But the children," Grace started, her voice taking on the manipulative tone that had worked so well for so long. "Are learning a valuable lesson about consequences," I finished. "Actions have results, Grace, even family actions." Giles attempted his old intimidation tactics, moving closer as if physical proximity could restore his psychological control. "This is ridiculous, Leland. We're family. Families work together, support each other, make sacrifices. You're absolutely right." My smile felt unfamiliar on my face, genuine rather than placating. Families do support each other. They include each other in experiences they fund. They respect each other's feelings and contributions. They don't exclude the patriarch and then act shocked when he takes back his power. The street felt different somehow, as if 10 days had shifted the entire neighborhood's perspective. Or maybe I'd finally learned to see my own world through clear eyes, instead of desperate, guilty ones. "Listen to me carefully," I continued, my voice carrying authority I'd never used with them before. "Here are the new rules for our relationship." Grace opened her mouth to interrupt, but something in my posture stopped her. Rule 1, I decide what I spend my money on and when. No more demands disguised as family needs. No more guilt trips about disappointed grandchildren. No more entitled expectations about my generosity. "Dad, you can't just—" Rule 2, include me properly or don't include me at all. I'm not a walking ATM who can be discarded after transactions. I'm the grandfather, the father, the man whose hard work funds the lifestyle you've grown accustomed to. Giles tried his old psychological tricks, voice taking on that particular condescending tone he'd perfected. "Leland, you're being unreasonable. Think about what you're—" "Rule 3, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. Treat me with the same respect you'd show any other investor in your family's financial portfolio. Because that's what I am, an investor who's been getting terrible returns on his emotional capital." Grace's tears started then, but they looked different from her usual manipulation tactics. These seemed real, born of recognition rather than performance. Rule 4, test these boundaries and find new funding sources. I've learned to say no, and it's a surprisingly liberating experience. The evening air carried the scent of Mrs. Patterson's roses and the distant sound of children playing in yards where grandparents were probably valued rather than exploited. "I love you both," I said finally, picking up my remaining luggage. "I love Ruby and Judson more than my own life, but love without respect is just expensive weakness, and I'm done being weak." Grace stepped closer, her voice small and broken. What if we try harder? What if things really change?" For the first time since their car had arrived, I saw a glimmer of the daughter I'd raised before Giles's influence had twisted her priorities into weapons against my affection. "Then you'll discover I'm still the most generous man you'll ever know," I replied. "But generosity flows both ways now. Respect, inclusion, basic human decency, those are my new minimum requirements for opening my wallet." I walked toward my front door, keys jingling with the sound of freedom, leaving them standing beside their expensive car in the driveway I'd helped them afford. "Dad?" Grace's voice followed me, uncertain and young-sounding for the first time in years. I paused at my doorstep, not turning around. "I'll be inside, wearing my new Hawaiian shirt and planning my next vacation. When you're ready to include me in the family I've been funding, give me a call. But understand, the old Leland who said yes to everything died in paradise. This one requires respect along with his love." The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like the end of one story and the beginning of another. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.